I've got a great story also that illustrates the benefits of using LLCs done correctly in a private way and using a professional registered agent to do them. I'll be honest, this story does sound made up, and the timing of it was very odd as well. I think it was in October 2 years ago. In the same month, I had 2 clients call me. One of them was an existing client. One of them was one that hired me for a consultation to sort some things out. But 2 clients called me with exactly the same situation. It was so strange. Both of these guys lived in Florida. Both of these guys had Florida LLCs. Both of these guys were in the supplement business, and both of them had been served lawsuits, class action lawsuits, and both of them were being sued for a class action lawsuit, being sued because the claimants claimed the ingredients in their product didn't match what was on their label. And these guys did not know each other, not connected. They didn't live in the same town. They just both lived in Florida. It was the weirdest thing. And these 2 calls came in one week, and then the next week, I was like, this is super odd. So the one client that called me, he was an existing client. We had registered his company in Florida, but then, if I'm not mistaken, we had a Wyoming holding company that owned his Florida LLC. And he used us to register the LLC, businessanywhere.io. He used us to register the LLC. We were the registered agent on record, and his name was nowhere in public record in the Florida Secretary of State. We, as registered agent, had been served this lawsuit from the lawyer, this class action lawsuit. We sent the documents over to the client. That's what we do. We have to provide that information to the client to inform them of any legal action against their company, that sort of thing. We have to sign for what's called SOP, or service and process mail, and we have to be able to receive that mail at our office during working hours. So we received the mail, we forwarded it to the client, and the client and I got on a consultation call, and he asked me what he should do about it. I told him, I said, look, I'm not a lawyer in the U.S. I can't represent you, so I would advise you to contact your local lawyer. I can tell you generally how these things work out, but I can't give you legal advice. And he said, okay, fine. Just give me what the ideas about what this means and what my consequences are and stuff like that. And I said, well, I can tell you, in most cases, if you ignore it, this will probably go away. I said, because it's a class action lawsuit, which means the lawyer is being paid on a contingency, meaning he doesn't get any upfront money. He's getting paid on the success of the lawsuit. So if they sue him and they win $10 million, he probably gets about $5 million of it in the lawsuit, and then the other $5 million gets split up equally among all the claimants in the class action lawsuit. I said, the lawyer doesn't get paid up front, which means he's not going to continue to come after you over and over and over again for a long period of time if he's not getting paid up front. I said, in most of these cases, if you ignore it, it goes away only because the lawyer is not going to keep working for free if he doesn't see, let's say, the light at the end of the tunnel. I said, I'm not suggesting you do anything. You asked me how these things normally work. This is my experience on how they normally work. I said, you could ignore it, and if it doesn't go away after 3 or 4 months, then hire your lawyer to deal with it. Because if it doesn't go away after 3 or 4 months, they're probably going to keep coming after you. Okay? In his case, he just ignored it. He said, okay, forget it. I'm just going to ignore it. And it did. It went away. The class action lawyer just kind of vanished. They stopped sending letters. They completely went away because the lawyer wasn't getting paid, and he didn't see any, money. He didn't see any light at the end of the tunnel there. He didn't see the pot of gold, right? So he gave up. He went away. Okay? That's the good side of the story. The other side of the story is the other guy. This guy called me, and he had registered his own LLC in the state of Florida. He used his home address as the registered address, the registered agent for the company. He was his own registered agent. His name was all over it. Basically, that exposed him personally to everything. And what happened is the class action lawyer that sued him named him personally. in the lawsuit because they found his name on the company documents. And they claimed negligence by the CEO of the company for selling a product that had missing ingredients or misrepresentation of the product. So they named him personally. Process servers were harassing him and his wife at home and kids. And he ended up having to deal with this in court because they served him personally. They served him personally and the company because they had his home address. All the process server did is went and knocked on his door and he answered hello. So he got personally served because they easily found his name and his address. And he ended up settling that thing for, it was 7 figures and he had 6 figures in legal bills to fight it. It was a disaster. It was a mess. But it was really odd that I had both of those two come to me in a 2-week window. Actually, a 1-week window, 1 week, and then the next week, the next guy. And so I think it illustrates really well that if you structure your business properly from the beginning, you do the right things from the start. Like you use a professional service to register your company. You use a registered agent. I mean, let's be honest. It costs a couple $100. It's not that big of a deal. When I was having the conversation with this guy, he was even arguing with me how he saved the money by not using a professional service to register the company for me. And I tried to explain to him, I said, look, if you would have done this correctly from the beginning, your name and home address wouldn't have been on this company documents. And they wouldn't have named you personally in the lawsuit. And you wouldn't have had process servers harassing you and your wife at home. I said, and you're talking about a couple $100 a year to do that? I mean, and this was not a tiny business. I mean, this was a mid 7-figure company. And he was proud of how he saved a couple $100 a year by being his own registered agent. It was a pretty surreal conversation because I was explaining to him that very thing is the reason that he's paying out a 7-figure settlement and 6 figures in legal bills. And back to the first one just for a second. Like I said, he did ignore it and it did go away. That doesn't mean it always goes away. But at a minimum, it puts you kind of in control of the situation on how you deal with it. And in that case, he also didn't get named personally in the lawsuit because his name wasn't on the documents, on the company documents. It's a pretty good illustration and a weird example, timing-wise for me anyway, a weird example of why it's pretty cheap insurance to register your company the right way from the beginning. I thought it was pretty funny that the guy did it. He did choose to ignore it and it did go away. And I assumed that was what would happen. These class action lawyers, I mean, that's kind of their business model. They hunt for dissatisfied customers. That's what they do. They go out to try to find dissatisfied customers and find out what the problem is. And then they find 1 or 2, and then they advertise to find other dissatisfied customers because you end up with let's say a $5 million lawsuit. Let's say a $10 million lawsuit. The lawyer gets $5 million of it. And let's say you had 100,000 clients. Well, they split $5 million between $5 million between 100,000 people. So everyone gets what? $50? So all the claimants get $50 a piece and the lawyer walks away with $5 million. Effectively, there's no advantage to the claimant, but the lawyers make a ton of money on this. And if they don't get paid, they're not going to keep working. In most cases with class action lawsuits, if they can't see that gold at the end of the rainbow, they give up. Why would they keep working and putting in billable hours and having their staff and their paralegals and junior lawyers do all this research because they got to pay them for that. That's an expense. They'd much rather just go find an easier target somewhere else. For example, the other guy, because they did get a payout there.
Would have been ironic if it was the same lawyer on both, huh?
It could have been. I don't know. I mean, I saw the lawyer on the one from my client because, we received the SOP mail. The other one, I didn't see it. I just never saw it. It was just a conversation I had with the other guy. We ended up doing some work for the other guy and restructuring his business. So it'll help him moving forward, but it didn't do anything for him in that situation. There's nothing you could do. Yeah, there's a thing called fraudulent conveyance. If you move assets after you've been sued, let's say you get sued today and then you call me up and say, hey, Bobby, let's move everything I've got into an LLC or into a trust or something like that, and we do it tomorrow. If that's found out during the discovery process of your case, then they'll unwind everything because of fraudulent conveyance. It could be a criminal action against you, but typically it's not criminal. They just make you unwind everything.